Hey, Jamie, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna just go back to just making sure you can hear and we can hear you here. So just when do we call? When's he on the agenda? 5 o'clock first. Oh, so you're gonna be pretty much at the start of the program. So just listen for your cue, I guess, and we'll talk then.
Okay, sounds good, Jim.
Thanks. Oh, are you gonna turn your camera on or are you gonna be off while you're a guest?
Yeah, I can do it either way. I didn't know how you were doing it, but yeah, I can turn the camera on when you're ready.
Okay, good. That'll be good because we'll actually have you up on a screen.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
hopefully you look presentable.
Oops.
Feel bad for Chuck.
I'm going to call the meeting to order because we have a guest speaker tonight. We're going to be on time, and we usually are on time. So with that, I'm going to introduce Jamie Ledeen. He's the president of the Chetek Lakes Protection Association. And Jamie and Tom and I go to a meeting of the Red Cedar Basin associations and groups in the Red Cedar Basin. And Jamie has some interesting things going on in Chetek and on the Chetek chain, which is connected to our chain. And so I thought it would be interesting to hear what they're doing. And they're again also making connections with other lake associations and districts in the state. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. Jamie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, very good.
And we can even
Um,
see you now.
Yeah, that's too bad.
No, you're just fine and you're happy. And so we're happy to have you. So I'll kind of turn it over to you and then you can give us the rundown as to what you guys got going on up in Chetek.
Okay. Well, I know from having talked to Al before this meeting, it seemed that most of the topics that that you all were interested in are really covered in our annual meeting. And we just had that last weekend, so I brought the slides along. If you can enable sharing, I can put them up on the screen and kind of walk you through those, and then you can kind of see what we're doing exactly. I think
Should
it's
be
more
enabled. Give it a try.
okay. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. All right, so we start the meeting by talking about our strategy, and our strategy defines, what we work on and what our priorities are. And before we established a strategy, a lot of the perceptions locally was, well, are they doing anything, or what do those guys do? And there was a lot of questions. So we firmed up a strategy, and we review that each year with the membership, and we share how that strategy ties in with all the projects we work on. So it's four categories basically. There's lake saving projects where we promote fish sticks and fish stocking programs and DNR grant programs for lake improvement. We have a strategy on innovative technology. Part of that is our skimmer for removing invasive weeds, and then we have shoreline management strategies and assistance to homeowners. Any homeowner, whether they're a member or not, can call us for advice, direction, or assistance, or if they would simply like a grant, we'll help them get that to improve their shoreline. And then we're always looking out for new water quality technologies, things that can be done to improve the water. And there's a variety of products that we've discovered, and we share some of that information with anyone that's interested. Third category is our education and outreach, and that's maybe a little bit unique here because we get so many visitors. We have a lot of people that come to our lakes that are here just for a week or a weekend, and they don't necessarily know what's proper on a lake, what's good behavior, bad behavior, what should they be thinking about when they're using the lake. So we do a lot of emphasis on education, not only for the residents, but for all these tourists that we see as well. And in addition to that, we as Al mentioned, we are members of the Red Cedar Watershed, and I've got a couple slides that describe that a little better coming up here. And then the fourth and final category of our strategy is citizen sciences. So we're doing water quality monitoring and data collection, and we have a clean boat, clean waters program. So we're trying to prevent invasive species. So some of the challenges that we shared with the membership this year, of course, every lake organization, if you're counting on volunteers, you have difficulty finding them. You have to keep reminding people that volunteers are needed and their time can be very flexible and they can accomplish a lot. Couple hours a month even will make a lot of headway. And so we have to remind people of that because they kind of forget that maybe they do have a couple hours here and there they could put in to help us. And we also have, of course, we're funded only by membership dues and donations and fundraisers. So we have to find ways to creatively having events to raise funds. But I don't know, down in your area, but up here, there's a lot of nonprofit organizations doing fundraising. There's about, I think we counted 18 different organizations selling raffle tickets over the summer. So it gets to be very competitive trying to raise money for all these good causes with a limited pocketbook that the public has. The other challenge is meaningful communication. So what people don't understand is the population sign in front of Chautauqua says population 2,300. But that's only reflecting the people that live in the city of Chautauqua. If you look at all the full-time residents that live on the 5 lakes in our chain, it's actually a population of about 6,000 people that are full-time residents, and then a few other thousand people that come, for summers and weekends throughout the year with the cabin or home that they may own on the lakeshore. So there's a lot of people that we need to communicate just beyond the city and beyond our membership that can benefit from from that kind of communication. So starting off with the education and outreach, we had a number of events this year. We had last April we had a information sharing event where we had representatives from the Barron County Conservationist, Eau Claire Extension, and DNR Lake Management Planner, all doing presentations and sharing information with the public. And we provided some food to kind of entice people to come and get educated on a variety of topics. Then we had a couple fundraisers. We have a meat raffle and an annual summer event called Protect Chautauqua, where we raise funds for certain projects. Most of it is for the skimmer project because that's a big part of what we offer to the public. And then we, of course, we have an annual meeting, and then we do a fall volunteer appreciation event where we basically buy the volunteers and their spouses a dinner at one of the restaurants. So one of the projects that we did, again, kind of in the vein of communication, is we had a lot of landing signs that were kind of half standing or leaning against the tree, or in some cases they were laying flat on the ground because the posts had rotted away. And so that's what you're seeing on the left side there. That's probably one of the better looking ones that we found when we were doing upgrades. And we created a standard sign, and which is what you see on the right, where all the information from the county, from the DNR, it's all on the sign in a standard location. We put up a treated backer board so it's not going to rot. We got 4x4 legs that are cemented into the ground, so they aren't going to go anywhere. Or if somebody does run into them, they're not gonna topple over. So that's been successful. We did that over a 3-year period, and we updated all 14 landings here on the Chautauqua chain. One of the projects that we did this spring is we added a QR code to the signs, to the landing signs. So if people are out there and they want to be able to pull up a map of the Chetek chain of lakes, they can take a picture of that QR code, which takes them to our website where they can download the Chetek chain of lakes map, and you can see it here in the background here. It's kind of covered up, but it's a map that you can get at all the tourist sites here in town. That's a free map, but we offer it as a map that they can download to their phones, since that's what most people really do. And then we added the ability for people to make donations if they like, the events that they're participating in. They can click on a QR code here for Venmo or PayPal or any credit or debit card, and they can easily make a donation. So that just started this summer, and we've had a few people that have taken advantage of that. And then we also started not to rely totally on fundraising events, but we started introducing sponsorships where we'd go to local businesses and we would promote their business if they would become a sponsor and basically make a donation of $500 a year or $1,500 a year. And we offered a lot of value. We're not just asking for a donation. What we do then for every sponsor is every newsletter we send out, they get included along the footer on each page. Every email that goes out, they're on the footer of the email. Every event we go to, their logo is included in the posters and at the event, and also on our Facebook pages as well, and our website. So they get a lot of promotion. There's one other thing they get. They also get a sign. It's about I think it's about a 10 by 12 sign at the landing of their choice, and they get their business logo on that. So they get promoted very heavily for that donation that they make. And that's been very successful. We're making more off of the sponsorships than we are off of the member dues. And just to give you a sense, so these are the sponsors that we've had. We have three $1,500 per year sponsors. This summer we picked up 4 additional businesses that have signed up for a sponsorship. And these are our sponsors. We've been collecting. Most of them are the signature level or the $500 a year, but offering two levels provides an option for everybody. Not everyone can afford a small business to make those kind of donations, but we provide them, and some of these businesses are able to support the higher donations. And we've done the same thing with individual membership. So our membership for a single is $15 a year, a family is $20 a year, a business is $30 per year. That's been the membership for the last probably 20 years. But what we've done is we have added a Friends of the Lake category. And if people want to choose that, they can check off that option and they can donate that amount. And I think, in the past, we didn't offer it. So a lot of times people didn't think about giving anything more than the standard membership. So we've done that. We've also made people aware that they can do in memoriam giving. So we've had people, when in lieu of flowers, please donate to the CLPA. We've also had a couple people that left us as a beneficiary on life insurance, so they can designate 10 or 20% of their policy to go to us, and then they can split it elsewhere. And so all of these get listed on our website too, all of our Friends of the Lake and in memoriam giving that's done. So people get recognition for doing those kinds of things. So we have clean boats, clean waters. There's nothing unique about our program. It follows the DNR program really to the letter. We have a training that we do for any volunteers. They also get a t-shirt, and they get a box of DNR rags that they can use for handing out to the boaters if they want to wipe down their boat, and inspect for invasive species. So it's kind of a fun thing. It's a good family type activity that, one or two people can do, or 3 or 4 family members can do it, and just volunteer when they're available. If we just like to make a presence and awareness, but we don't have to be there, 8-10 hours a day. If we're even there a couple hours, here and there on a weekend or a weeknight, it serves as a reminder that those are important things to look out for the boat cleanliness. So we had a couple slides this year on power loading. I don't know, about your landings, but we've had a lot of landings that have started to go bad. And the picture you see here really illustrates what we have at a couple of our most popular landings. There's holes towards the end, and it's caused, of course, by revving the engines to get the boat on the trailer without having to use a winch. And that, of course, that rips up the bottom right in front of the landing there. And the problem with that is there's not very many places where that's illegal. In fact, there's no state law, and there's only a few counties that have made it a law that you can't do power loading. Barron County for us is one of those that has an ordinance. As you can see here on our sign, there is a $154 fine, but it's difficult to enforce because someone from DNR or law enforcement has to physically see it themselves. And with 300 lakes in Barron County, they're just not at these landings very often. So it's still a tough issue, even though we have an ordinance here. So basically, this is what we're trying to avoid. These are actual photos of people who have been unfortunate at a couple of these landings where they've chipped up their prop, or in some cases, they've really damaged their trailers almost beyond repair. In in one case that I know of, but so that's what we're trying to get the word out. That's probably more effective than the law enforcement, which is tough to do. So starting last year, we did a sediment study. We've always been kind of suspicious. Is there a problem in our sediment? Do we need to be dredging some of that material out? We didn't really know those answers. In the past, there had been a handful of samples taken, but there had never been a comprehensive study of the sediment in our lake system. So last summer, we had a engineering company that went out and they took 60 samples at 30 different sites. And you see this map here is a map of the chain of the 5 lakes. And then each of these yellow dots is where the sample was taken. So as you can see, it's spread out, amongst all the lakes. And we really focused on some of these bays that have stagnant water and algae mats and things like that, try to understand how that looks contrary to the rest of the lake system. So we got all these samples, and and we told the residents, if you're interested in the data near your property, each one of these samples can be viewed on our website. You can go, if this is the sample you're concerned with, you can go look at that report for that sample, and you can see what the depth of the sediment was and what the content was of the sediment. This chart here is an average of some of the key ingredients that were found in our sediment across the board. And you can see there's a lot of variance, and like I said, the average numbers don't really do justice. Like if you're looking at average depth of sediment, it looks like it's 1 to 2 feet, but actually we had samples that vary anywhere from 1 foot to 4.5 feet of sediment in certain spots. So the average doesn't really buy you much there. That's why we told people to go look at the data near their property. What's kind of interesting is we did have a fair amount of phosphorus in that sediment, which I guess we expected. But what was also unexpected was that we had a pretty fair amount of nitrogen. You can see here. And what that was telling us is that not a lot of that phosphorus that's in our sediment is being released into the lake because our nitrogen levels are high enough, or I'm sorry, not nitrogen, iron. The iron levels in the water are high enough where it doesn't let the chemical reaction take place that releases the phosphorus. So we do think there are some bays that would benefit from some dredging, but we found that very little of the lake system needs dredging after we did this study. But we definitely are going to be looking at dredging some small bays because we find that if we make the bays healthy, it makes the rest of the lake healthy as well. When a bay is sick with stagnant water and algae and plants and a buildup of phosphorus, that just moves on out to the rest of the lake and makes the rest of the lake kind of poor. So our focus on, and you'll see in a lot of these projects, is make some of these stagnant waters and bays healthier, for the benefit of the greater lake system. So our next steps with the sediment study is we're going to continue to look at more analysis on the chemical makeup. And then we're also going to look at trying to see if the sediment would be suitable for selling to farmers as a fertilizer to help fund some of the dredging cost. And to confirm if it's recyclable, then we can sell it. If it's recyclable, the DNR is more in favor if you are recycling materials rather than just removing them and dumping somewhere. They don't take too kindly to that, but when you can show recycling, they're much more they're much more interested in supporting your project if you can demonstrate that. So just a couple slides on the Red Cedar watershed. Al mentioned that your group is also a member. That's actually how I met Al several months ago. There are a number of organizations that are a part of the watershed. Prior to this group, there really wasn't any coordination. Everybody was kind of working in their islands, and nobody was really working together across all of these pieces of watershed. And the Red Cedar watershed is one of the largest ones in Wisconsin. It's 1,900 square miles, and it covers 7 counties. So since it's split across 7 counties, each county kind of does their own thing. So without some coordinating group, there really wasn't much progress being made. So this group got together to try to mend that. And as you can see here on this list, there's a lot of cross-functional groups that are all part of this, working together, anywhere from DNR to county conservationists to city and state and county government. We've got farmers involved along with the various lake groups. So it's a real good cross section of people, all focused on getting the Red Cedar as a whole improved. So some of the activities that that this group has worked on is a lot of it relating to agriculture, because a lot of the problems that most of our lakes have is stormwater runoff into the lakes that create some of this excess, phosphorus that produces excess algae. So as you can see on this list, a lot of these projects are agricultural focused, and we do see improvement since a lot of these programs have been put in place. These are some measurements that are made at the dam in Menominee. And this shows what on the left side here. I know the title is kind of hard to read. This slide is measuring the nitrate levels at the dam. And as you can see, since the 90s, it's been kind of slowly ramping up until these last 3 years seems to have settled out and maybe even starting to trend downward. A little early to state that, but we believe a lot of the activity is improving that situation. Same over here on the right side of this graph. This is measurements of phosphorus, and there's definitely a serious trend of phosphorus going down in the lake or in the watershed system, over the last 10, 12 years. So that's good news. I find that this photo below is very telling. It was taken after a very large rainstorm. And the person who took the photo, he took it here because that tree line is a property line. The farmer on the left used traditional farming methods. And so when the big rains came through, you see a lot of water pooled up, and you see runoff and things. The farm on the right side of the line is a farmer that practices some of these new regenerative farming practices, and you see there's nothing washing out, there's no pooling. It's all very stable soil, and of course that's the goal. And this was just a classic example of contrasting old ways and new ways, and what they could be. So we have a lake monitoring program with again, we're dependent on volunteers. We do a clarity test, and we do oxygen check with the meters. And it's actually kind of a nice service. You collect your data over the summer, and then in the fall you go to the DNR website and you enter the data, and the DNR keeps all that data. So then you can go back and look at all the years that data is taken. It's always there. So we've got data we can look at from 40 or 50 years. There's some gaps in that data when some years where there wasn't a volunteer taking some of that data, but it's actually kind of a nice service to be able to have somebody storing that data for your use. And then this slide summarizes the Healthy Lakes program. It's a grant program for improving the lake beds and preventing runoff and things like that. And so there's 5 projects that the DNR will approve through grant funding: fish sticks, native plant plantings, rain gardens, diversions. So we've done a few diversion projects where somebody's got water rushing in on a hilly, high elevation lot that's feeding right into the lake, and diverting the water, over to a ditch or a culvert or something where it won't go into the lake. And then rock infiltration is kind of similar to a rock garden, where you dig a pit and you fill it with stones so that when water is running, it runs into that rock garden, and the rock garden stops it, or at minimum slows it down. So there's a lot of those projects we've done in the last, we started it about 6 years ago. We've done about 50 of these over the years. This year was a little bit slow. We only had 2 homeowners that's actually signed up. But it is one of the better programs in terms of lake health, and a lot of the homeowners like the fact that the DNR will pay $1,000. The problem with it is with inflation, that $1,000 isn't going as far as it used to, 6 years ago when we started this. So I think that's part of the reason why it's kind of slowed down a little bit, because now the $1,000 is maybe representing 50 or 30% of the total cost. Whereas 6 years ago, the $1,000 pretty much covered a more than half of the projects that homeowners were requesting. So that's a challenge, and we've given feedback to the DNR on that one. So the aquatic plant management plan, that cost us a lot of money. Of course, we have 5 lakes here, so we have a lot of land to cover, but we needed it for a number of things. First of all, we need data for making better decisions. We are involved with having a mechanical skimmer that's harvesting weeds, and to get that permit, you have to maintain a plant management plan on a regular basis. So ours was 10 years old and needed to be upgraded. So that's what why we worked on it. So we took all of our plant samples in the summer of 2022, and basically across these 5 lakes, they took 3,000 samples where they'd throw a rake in and pull it up and then see what plants were in that spot. And so they mapped out and processed these 3,000 samples. And of course, the documentation and the engineering analysis and all that took time. So we finally got the final report here in February this year. And that information is also posted on our website if you want to see any of the detail. The plan breaks down basically into 5 areas that defines what our management plan is. Managing the native plants, prevention of invasive species, and improving water quality and maintaining the restrictions to nuisance vegetation. So what's kind of interesting is if you are looking at our old plan, compare it to the data that we had from 2022, you see kind of a little bit of a mixed bag. So in 2011, we had a lot more weeds in the north end of this lake. This is Ojaski. In 2022, you see less of the weeds. A lot of areas kind of stayed the same. These are, real slow moving areas. But what's really interesting about that is this is part of the study, which was strictly looking at the curly leaf pond. The DNR expected to see huge increase because they're seeing huge increases across the state. But what you find is we actually have less curly leaf pond in this lake than we did before. And this lake had so much curly leaf pond before that from about this point here north, you really didn't navigate it after the end of July because it was one solid algae mat. And this was one of the areas that we focused on with our skimmer. And so a lot of these curly leaf pond, once we pulled them out by the roots with this machine, Not nearly as many have grown back. We still have some, but as you can compare, we have quite a few less because it was one of our focus areas for the skimmer. And then we had, this is another lake. This is Prairie Lake. This is one of the largest ones. This is about 5 miles long from head to toe here. What you see here is, to a large degree, on our new data, not much change on the north end, about the same. But we picked up some areas along here that we hadn't had curly leaf pond before. So we're keeping our eye on these areas because they're new to us. So those are the kinds of things you learn from that plan study. And again, it's available at our website if you want to look at some detail. The last area I was planning to review was the weed skimming operation. We started it in 2016. We constantly remind people that we don't have any grants or tax money funding it. And if we keep reminding people of that, then they continue to give us maybe a little more donation than they would, because it's one of our most popular programs across the board. But it's driven all by volunteers. We just barely have enough, but we have had enough each year to maintain the program and hit all of these stagnant bays and clean them out. So normally we don't find weeds complaints until right around 4th of July would be a kind of a normal year. Well, this year, because of the light winter, the early ice out, the sun was shining through the water, much earlier and helping those weeds grow. And we actually had our first weed report in March, which has never happened before. So we had the skimmer out about 6 weeks earlier than normal. We were out in the early June, and normally we don't start skimming until the middle of July. But it was such a substantial amount of weeds this year due to that light winter. And so what we do is when we pull them out with the skimmer here, we put the material in a trailer, and we take the trailer to Jerry's Tree Service here. And Jerry's Tree Service, excuse me, Jerry's Tree Service composts it for 3 years, and then they sell the compost to a variety of different people that need compost. So it's recycled. So the DNR is very much in favor of it because of the recycling element to it. And we weren't just spreading material, willy-nilly somewhere. It's actually being used and controlled. So this was our history with the weeds. Of course, when we first started out, those first 3 years, we were clearing out a lot of weeds. And each year, as time has gone on, it's been less and less until this year, which I explained was because of the light winter. But it's definitely trended our weed population down, and it's now staying at much lower levels than before 2016, when there was nothing being done about weeds, basically. So we map where we take our weeds, and of course we have to report that to the DNR as well. But we do it for ourselves too, because a lot of times homeowners they like to know, well, are you actually going where the weeds are needed? People don't really always trust without data, and so if people don't see you at their end of the lake, they wonder if you've ever been there. So we keep track, and as you can see here, these different parts of the lake system tells you how many loads of weeds we pulled out of each of those areas. So this is a real nasty bay. if we didn't have any weed pulling in here, it would probably fill in over time. There was 17 loads there. This is our Moose Ear Lake. It's very shallow, probably 6 feet. We take a lot of loads out of there, and then 10 Mile is also a very shallow lake at the very end of our chain. There's 19 loads there, so as you can see, we're really, all of this is focused on the bays. We're not like going up and down, the lake system. So out of the 3,800 acres of lake that we have across these 5 lakes, we really only skim in about 10 acres. And it's those 10 acres that produce most of these weeds in those stagnant bays. So all of these weeds are coming from a small 10 acres that's been spread across the chain. So again, thank you to our volunteers, of course. And then the last thing we covered, there's been a growing concern amongst homeowners about wake boats. And I don't know if you see wake boats on your lake, but we started seeing them 2 or 3 years ago. They're very disruptive. They disrupt the sediment if it's a shallow lake. And our lakes are shallow. Our deepest lake is 23 feet, but like those small lakes towards the end of our chain, they're 6 to 8 feet. So these kind of boats really churn up the sediment and erode the shoreline. So there's a lot of concern over that, and we're pushing the legislature to hopefully address it in 2025. And then last but not least, this is kind of amazing. This is a list of all the businesses that supported us one way or another, either through giving us a prize that we could use at a raffle or making a contribution. These are all local businesses. There's only a couple that aren't, like Quick Trip and We Energy, but the rest of them are all small local businesses that are interested in supporting the lake. So we feel, that we've established a good rapport with local businesses if they're this supportive. And it's one of our great accomplishments because it wasn't always this way. So on that, I guess I've hit all the topics I told Al that I would cover, but I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Does anybody on the board or even in the audience have a question?
I do. I'm curious or to know more, if you guys have tried, as you described it, water technology options for cyanobacteria. Are you doing any sort of like spraying? Do you notice that your skimmer tends to pick a lot of that up as it's picking up weeds? More specific to cyanobacteria, how are you guys trying to combat that?
There was a spot on the chain where they were using chemicals to treat one of these bays. It was a homeowner association property in bay. And so they'd been kind of doing their thing there for a few years, and the DNR is become more critical of that. And basically they stopped allowing them to do chemical treatments. They will approve chemical treatments, but it's becoming more difficult to get that approval. It's got to be very specific situations. Otherwise, as far as the bacteria, again, it's mostly the problem is in the stagnant bay areas. So there's diversion devices, there's water thrusters and things people can put on their dock that basically is a small fan that you stick in the water that keeps the water moving. And I've seen several of those on our chain that they seem to work. They keep the algae from accumulating at a dock or a boat so people can navigate, in and out of their docks. Another solution I've seen where, again, they're Band-Aids, but it's a product called a lake mat. And it's like a metal flexible mat where that you can buy. They're about the typical one is maybe 10 by 20 feet. And you can lay down one or two of those along your dock and your shoreline, and weeds won't grow underneath that. And some people have done things like that to keep weeds out so they can navigate to their docks. Otherwise, as far as getting to root cause, that's a little bit longer term project. And so that's where we're hoping that all of these different activities, coupled with the red cedar activities, will help us get to a point where we're attacking more of the phosphorus and nitrogen that's causing the cyanobacteria problems.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Well, Jamie, you've been very thorough. Thank you. I don't.
James, I have one question
Oh,
for,
okay.
the signage that you did, along at the boat landings. Did you have to then work with the county to, get permission to adjust or change the signage that got placed there? Cause I would assume that for the most part, the county probably owns those, the landings on the lakes.
Well, that's kind of a complicated question because the landings are owned by many different parties. The city owns some of them, the county owns some of them, the DNR owns some of them, and then there are some private landings that are owned and used by the public. So there isn't kind of one solution for all. So what we did is we maintained the content that they had on the old sign, and we just told them we were replacing them and fixing them. And of course, we did that at no charge, so that they didn't have a problem with that. And so we just made them aware, but we kept their content. And so the DNR has very specific templates, for those different topics, and they would provide those signs to us. But all the other signs that came from the city or the county or the DNR, we just contacted them and kept their signs up and just repaired the structure of the sign.
Okay, gotcha.
Other questions? Again, Jamie, thank you. It was very good. And you guys keep up the good work up there. I keep on your maps, I keep looking where I used to live and what you did in near my house. So you've done good work. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, our goal is to continue these projects so there's less algae going down towards your direction.
We appreciate
Yeah,
that.
that'd be great.
It's kind of like leaves in the fall. What's your neighbor's one day is yours the next, right?
Yeah, it unfortunately that's true. Yeah.
Okay, one more question, Bob.
Yeah, let me see, do you get involved at all in, no wake buoy or no wake zone? Placement? I noticed you didn't.
The question, Jamie, is do you get involved with any no wake, or any, ordinance? I know you, as an association, you don't have a power to create ordinances, but do you recommend to the townships any ordinances or the county?
We don't have anything pending right now, although I think we are going to get involved with the wake boat issue. But otherwise, no, we don't really have any other pending activity, but there has been, yeah, off and on through the years, of course.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll sign off now and move on to the rest of our meeting. Thank you for taking the time. And by the way, I'll buy you lunch the next time we have a meeting, okay? And
Hey, that's an offer I can't refuse.
Tom's gonna pay.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, thanks, guys.
Does anybody need a break?
Why? We never take breaks.
Oh, well, I thought we did the last time.
And we have an agenda up on the screen too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, that was very thorough. Thank you. Approval of the agenda and minutes for the July 18th meeting and the July 22nd Strategic Planning Committee. You've all seen those minutes? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and minutes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the agenda and minutes of the July 18th and July 22nd. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report, Grant?
Okay, our current checking account balance is $9,840.98. Our savings account has $1,131.83 in it. We had one transaction since the annual meeting. It was $62.75, if I'm remembering right off the top of my head, for Colfax Messenger for the meeting postings. And our 24-25 fiscal year started August 1st.
Okay. Any questions on the treasurer's report?
Repeat the amounts again, please, Grant.
Yep, $9,840.98. That's
Okay.
for the checking account, and then $1,131.83 in the savings account.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept the treasurer's report as read.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. Just one point of clarification, the savings account is, that's all of our,
Donations.
that's where our donations are going.
Mhm.
And then the other is where our other funds.
That would have
are.
been tax levy money, yep.
Okay. Just so I understand that, okay. There's been a motion and a second to approve the treasurer's report. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Recognition of visitor and visitor comments. So anybody that. You're up. I'll get it. The mic slide.
Well, I'm Jerry Leff and I have several suggestions or a few suggestions for the next annual meeting, the 2025 one. Things to kind of maybe make a little smoother, a little shorter meeting. The first item, my wife assures me will label me a troublemaker. Sorry about that. That's not the intent. All of my suggestions are intended to make life easier for you guys and easier for us taxpayers to understand what's going on. That is short and simple of it. The first one is start the meeting on time. And you commented on that at the beginning of this meeting, and I appreciate that. Most of us were able to be there. All of you guys on the board were. And there was time for everybody. If you took advantage of the time available, you got there in good time. The second one is clearly identify the purpose of the organization. And part of that is just so that only emotions and actions in support of that central purpose are appropriate. So you can, if somebody's off on a wild hair that's not a part of the operational goals of this group, they're simply out of order. make life easier for everybody. And include the version of Robert's Rules of Order. Just, there's so many versions out there, and I think you did this time, but that's one of those funny little details that kind of lends credibility to the whole operation. And it'll make, it makes it look like you know what you're doing with the meeting, and that's important. The appearances are important. And the finances, the impression I got was that it sounded as though that we weren't able to keep track of all of the expenses. Well, that doesn't seem to square with what I was hearing at the meeting or what I'm hearing tonight. So I'm not sure how I got that impression, but I'm afraid I hope nobody else got it. And forecast expenses, somebody who's done a lot of forecast budgets and all that sort of stuff, never put down to the nearest dollar, for heaven's sake. Leave yourself some wiggle room. And which kind of gets to one on the motions, the motion that to employ a particular group for a particular price to do some dredging on the lake. Okay, it passed. I don't have a problem with that. The thing is that I guess I would rather have had the motion say so many dollars allocated toward cleaning up, dredging the lake, if you will, or taking out the weeds, and not put in the name of the company. Who knows if they're going to really be in operation next year? Just, it's kind of cover your own tails. And if you put down just, a certain number of, to the nearest $10,000, you say it's going to be $50,000. Okay. And if it's less than that, wonderful. If you come up with a better solution in the before the work is actually done, you still have the option to follow it. You're not tying your hands, and I hope everything works out well, but just leave yourself some room to wiggle. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I wrote those all down, by the way.
I'm sorry.
I wrote them all down, but you're gonna give them to me, aren't you? Good man. Thank you. Yeah. Hang around to the end because we're gonna get into a debriefing at the end about the annual meeting, and my wife was out on the tables and she had a lot of suggestions. Jim had some good suggestions also, so we'll talk about those a little later, but your points are well taken. Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay, moving on, discussion and action portion of the meeting. We have a brand new board member, and there is an oath of office that we do as I bring it up. And so with Adam, I'm going to read this oath of office, and you can just say, I do. I, the undersigned, who has been elected or appointed to the office of Commissioner of the Tainter Lake Rehabilitation District, but have not yet entered into duties thereof, affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin, and faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God. Do you agree to this?
I do.
Okay, you're official now, man. There's no secret handshake or anything else, but I will have a document for you and to sign, and we will put that on record as all of us have signed that document. The welcome aboard.
Thank you.
It's all the fun you can have. Or
I've seen some of the fun.
yeah, you get paid twice as much as I do, which is nothing. Election of officers. Okay. Does anybody have suggestions? I suppose, do you want to do it by position? Or Okay.
I make a motion that the current officers are nominated for their current positions for this term. I don't know if I'm phrasing it properly, but basically everybody who's currently serving as in an officer position I can see them serving in those positions going forward.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been a motion, a second. Now comes the discussion. Are you okay with
Yeah.
that, Grant?
Yeah, I'm good doing what I'm doing.
Tom?
I am.
I'm okay with it. Jerry, he's not here, so he doesn't get a choice.
He's good at it then, yeah.
One of these years, he misses this meeting, he'll become president.
Who made the second? I did.
Adam did.
Thank you, Adam.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to continue with the same positions. And the slate of officers remain the same. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We always have it, and I put this in the agenda because I think it's important that we yearly review where we're posting our meetings. And right now, we post in the Colfax Messenger. Tom and Jim posted on our social media and our website, and we also posted at Jake's, Pioneer,
Nope, Elk Point
Jake's and Elk Point,
and the Lambs Creek Boat Landing.
at the Lambs Creek Boat Landing. So those, just so that everybody knows, that's going beyond what we legally have to do. Technically, we wouldn't have to post in the newspaper, but I always think it's good to post it in the newspaper. Especially in our infancy, to cover as many, cover as many bases as we can. I think if we, at some time, I believe we should continue to post in the messenger until we have a very active and robust communication system with emails. Because then with legally, by posting it on our website, social media, and 3 places, at least you only really have to do 2 places in the public. I think we can cover that and it would save us some money. Although it would be nice to know how many people actually read the Colfax Messenger, but it also gets put in the Glenwood City paper too. So we actually, by putting our notices in the paper, we cover a lot of, a greater number of people, not just residents of the lake, but also the public that would be using the lake. And I think that's important that we start connecting with that group also. So that's something to do. I guess I would continue to have that as our posting sites for
Yeah.
this coming year.
It cost us about $1,000 to post in the Colfax Messenger last year. So,
Okay.
I mean, I don't see it being something that if we stop doing that, it's all of a sudden gonna make this grand, large scale change for us, you know?
Right.
I mean, it's probably money well spent to communicate to the public, and we've always talked about wanting to be transparent and get information out there.
There's a certain.
There's a way to
segment-
find it anywhere.
Yeah, there's a segment of the population that still reads the newspaper.
Yep,
And
for sure.
I think that's important. That's my way of thinking is a newspaper is, the newspaper comes to you, you don't have to go to it.
Yep.
Where if you put it on a website or whatever, you have to find it to be able to get it. And so that's why I'm always in favor of the newspaper. So could I have a motion to continue with those official posting sites?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue with the posting sites.
With the newspaper, the social media,
Website, social media.
and the three physical places.
And I will second that.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Any more further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, new commissioner orientation, Adam, I put this down there. It's not a big deal. It's a quick orientation. Some of this you may already know. Some of it needs, I'd feel better if we said it. And the other thing is, it's a good review for the other members of the committee to hear again too. The biggest one, I would say, is the open meetings law. People not used to working in a municipal entity like we are, sometimes don't understand that three of us just can't meet to get together to formulate to talk about the business of the district. And I'm getting feedback or, okay, that's better.
Tom, don't point it up because that's pointing it toward the speaker.
Okay, so the biggest thing about meeting is that we can't meet without being posted in a meeting or have a meeting posted. That meeting posting has to be in the paper and it has to at least be on the website and the social media. So, and this probably doesn't make a lot of difference to you right now, but wait until you start chairing a committee, and then you're gonna have to be responsible for getting that out. It has to be out in at least 24 hours before the meeting. I always like to have it out a week before the meeting so that people it's it's optics. If all your meeting postings are 24 hours before the meeting and nobody knows that you're having a meeting, then they're gonna start to say, well, what are you up to? So it's best to get it out there as soon as you can. Meeting agendas. Every meeting has to have an agenda and every meeting has to have minutes. The minutes are the legal document of what we do, our record of our work. And the minutes do not have to go into detail. Sometimes context is important, but most of the time the minutes, all they have to have is the motion and the vote. That's the legal part of the minutes. And so all the minutes, then Tom is actually responsible for all the minutes of all the committees and everything else. So that all goes to the secretary. And if anybody needs any help with agendas and minutes, just give me a call and I'll kind of walk you through that. Communication between commissioners. The one button that you never ever want to use is reply all. Okay. Grant can talk to me. I can talk to Grant. But what can't happen is I can't talk to Grant and then all of a sudden then reply all, and that conversation goes to all of us. Because then that constitutes a walking quorum, and then that's considered a meeting. The other thing, and as you pointed out to me, you got your email up and running, that don't delete anything in that email. Because your emails are subject to subpoenas. So just let it collect, or you can organize it any way you want. Just, and there again, we're not up to anything. But it's just a clean way of doing business is to keep all of that. If we ever get a request for information and people want to know, we're legally responsible for providing that information to what is going on in emails. So you can communicate between commissioners. What you can't do is communicate between everybody at one time. Chapter 33 of the state statutes is the statute that has all of the legal components of how lake districts work. It starts with lake districts and then goes into sanitary districts, which is covered at the tail end of some of that. The other thing is, there's a book. It's called People of the Lakes. Download this. It's on a PDF form. Download this. I'll snag you one next year. At a convention, they usually have these, but this has all of it's broken down. Everything that we do as a lake district, it's broken down into normal language with the statutes referenced on the side. But this is a really good book to have. It explains a lot of the things that you can't do, you can and can't do. Discussion versus action. This is a key point in boardsmanship that a lot of people miss. That a lot of times there's discussion, but discussion is not action. The only thing that makes a difference is the vote that we take. And so and I'd say this to new board members all the time, if there's a discussion and people are asking questions, don't take offense that they're asking questions. Sometimes they're doing it for two reasons. Number one, they know the answer, but they want it as a part of the discussion. The second thing is they may not know. And so we need to ask and we need to challenge each other and ask those questions, because to be quite honest with you, I'd rather have you ask me questions than to be sitting at Jake's and have somebody else ask me the question without having any answers. I know Jim doesn't know how that works, but it is something to ponder on, and don't take offense when people, especially board members, ask questions, because that's part of what we do is that's the discussion part. The key piece is what the action is. Meeting agendas, time line for submissions. We'll always have, how do you get the question, how do I get an agenda item on the agenda? And the best way to get the item on the agenda is at the previous meeting. You'll notice on our agenda at the end, it says topics for discussion. Is to bring it up then. But if something comes up and people want items on the agenda, all they got to do is get them to me. But realize I try to get the agenda to the newspaper 10 days in advance of what the meeting date is, so that people have, I try to get it at least so it's in the paper a week before. And so Tom and Jim have at least 7 to 10 days before the meeting to get the agenda out. Now, that doesn't mean that something comes up, we can't amend an agenda. We can certainly do that, and we have the right to do that. But for most things, in advance, or if something comes up and you want it on the agenda, just get it to me. The other thing I would tell you is that a lot of times I'm not sitting by the phone. Sometimes I don't look at my emails until the next day. If you need something, call me, okay? That usually gets my attention, and I usually answer the phone. Usually, unless I'm running machinery or something, and then I'll get back to you right away, though. So if that's how you get an item on the agenda. Is there anything I forgot as this quick and dirty boardsmanship? Jim, is there anything you can think of that?
The only thing I thought about is just, it's all right to group email everybody at once going out. Just you don't do the reply all. That's it.
Right.
So that's the only time you can do a group email.
Right. Any questions, Adam?
No, Jim helped me out getting my email set up, and I believe I was here for this speech last year when you gave it.
So you got it twice.
The whole board, so
That's
I
good.
kind of was aware of all this stuff.
Well, that's good, because sometimes if people are used to working in private business can do a lot of things that we can't do in the public arena. And one of those is everything's got to be out in front. Well, with that being said, I'll move on. You didn't have anything to add?
No, I'm just happy you gave the refresher because, it's always good to hear it again.
Yeah. Okay, so standing, discussion of standing committees. I had, in an email, it said, are we at that time when we should be considering some standing committees? Or is ad hoc the best way to go? So I'll open it up for discussion.
We need standing committees, or at least a couple of the things, if the weed harvesting is gonna be an ongoing thing, that needs to be just an ongoing standing committee, and for sure the buoy, slow, no wake zone, that if we're creating an ordinance, that's a permanent committee at this point.
Okay,
Yeah, the sedimentation committee is gonna be ongoing as well.
okay,
And I think that creating, because we've had a number of people, talk about fundraising and, that creating that committee is even probably more important because that could be, one of the things I noticed with Jamie's presentation is like, wow, look at all that outside money coming in. We need to be doing a lot of that with sponsorships and even grants that could be looking at other sources that we're not even thinking about for stuff. So, and we've had at least a couple people that really were really interested in it, including, what's his name that was here earlier that, yeah, Tim.
Yep.
That seems to be one of Tim's focuses. So let's put him to work.
right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thought exactly what Jim said, that was pretty cool what they had laid out on how they're doing that for the fundraising side of it. And I think we can do the same things, honestly. I mean, we just gotta have a group of people that are going for it. I had a couple other people after the annual meeting come up and talk to me on my way out the door about being willing to work on the fundraising side of things too. So I don't think that's gonna be a hard one to find people that are willing to chip in on. The only other one I have written down I scribbled down a note was, I know Chuck would have brought it up with cyanobacteria, and we kind of talked about that. And I mean, we don't even have a ad hoc committee for that yet, so I guess I don't know how that works, but I doubt cyanobacteria is gonna be going away anytime soon in Tainter Lake, so I
I
don't
think
wanna,
that the ad hoc is a great way to kind of start,
okay,
do the research, and then kind of come up with a plan how to address it, and then like a standing committee can be formed if it, I think it's obviously gonna be a ongoing thing, but that ad hoc committee can kind of determine that focus. It's like even our committee, our ad hoc committee looked at whether we would also take on boat landings and then realized it was just too much for that committee to do. So that's got moved off and that can be moved into something else. But I think the ad hoc committee, since there hasn't been that committee, at least something to be created to start that work to then determine if there's something ongoing that that the district can do.
Okay,
I- May I?
yes,
I think if I were to, title that committee Grant, and I agree that that area is very important, I think I would make the title a little more broad and label it water clarity and safety, something along those
Yeah.
lines.
yep,
Because then the fish project and the carp hunting project could go into that group as
Yeah.
well.
yep, everything that it's kind of like everything you're gonna try to do to mitigate cyanobacteria from blooming, right? I mean,
Right.
what if we called it water quality?
yeah, I think that's
That kind of
nice and
goes along
broad and
with,
straightforward, yeah.
how about if we do, and let's, between now and the next meeting, let's give that committee some thought and a charge. I like to have, a specific purpose for an ad hoc committee. I just don't like assigning committees to just say, run along and do your work.
Mhm.
Let's put our heads together for a specific outcome. Some of this will be generated, I know, by our, strategic plan. But like somebody said, there has to be some research and there's some preliminary steps that have to be taken. There's also the fish process, and that all has to contribute to water quality. So we can give me your ideas as to what that charge of that committee should be, and I'll formulate it, and then next month we can take and have that discussion and that and clarify that charge. And be thinking of potential people to put on that, to have on that committee also. There's a bunch of people around the lake that would like to get involved. And that's a meaningful, committee, to get started with.
So is
So
that something that we can we put a post like on our Facebook page or put that out there that we are looking for people that might be interested, or do we have to have the committee first and then staff it?
if I were reading the post, I would want to know exactly what I'm getting involved in.
Okay,
And, especially with committee work, sometimes I'd like to at least start out with people to say there's a beginning and an end, that it isn't, death by committee or a sentence. So I would say once we have that, then I think we could put that out, and then whoever chairs that is responsible for putting that group together. I think that works pretty good. Jim did it with, his committee. Tom's done it with his committee. You're gonna find that when you have a committee, that it's still gonna be the same 3 or 4 people that do the work. Even though you have anywhere from 10 to 20 people.
Sounds
But
familiar.
it's all good. That's just the way it works, and that's life and how that works. So water quality, we'll put that on, next month's, agenda. And so if you get some thoughts to me.
And I mean, can we do the fundraising too, or is that too much for one? I mean, I think,
How about this, Grant? How about finance and fundraising?
yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay, I think the treasurer should be the chairperson of that.
I'm more, I am more than happy.
You have some great ideas, and I think you're the
think
right
it's,
person now.
I think it's just, it could be an incredibly powerful thing for us as far as making big things happen, and then just reducing our own tax burden on ourselves too.
Right.
You know, I mean, so I'm fine with that. That would be good.
And I think, with fundraising, I think, Tim
Tim, yep,
would be somebody that should co-chair it, or
yep.
I think you could rely on. He has a more flexible schedule and less children. than you
Less
do.
responsibilities in life. Yeah, I can't put myself behind the 8 ball there, but
Yeah,
I have a lot of questions with if we fundraise money, the legalities to using that. Does everything have to be done at the annual meeting with that money, or, you know, sometimes you acquire a grant and there's like expenditure deadlines when you get a grant, you know, you have to spend the funds in the quarter or what
Yeah.
it may be. So there's a lot to learn with that, I think.
right. There is, there's definitely some different twists. And especially it's gonna get more complicated when we have taxpayer money, donated money.
mhm.
That's why we created, we separated the two. Because there's some legal obligations with the taxpayer money that there isn't necessarily with the, fundraised, are the grant, the contributions
Mhm.
that we've had. So, that'll be part of that committee's job, is to straighten all of that out and to make sure that that's, clear to everybody. I just had a thought and I forgot all about it now. Oh, the one thing I was gonna say is realize when Jamie was talking about their community, they've been at this for about, well, I lived up there for almost 30 years and it was there when I was there, so they've had a long time to put some of this stuff together,
Mhm.
where we've only had 2 years.
Yeah, it's just a target kind of where you want to get
Right.
to, and I think a lot of the stuff he laid out, it's like, yep, that makes a ton of sense. Yep, that makes a ton of sense. And so it's a goal, right? I mean, you know,
Right.
it takes time.
And that's the only way they
They can.
fund their
Right.
efforts.
Right, right. And so that, having lived in Chautauqua, it's an interesting community and he is right. There's about 17 different organizations that are competing for the same dollars, and businesses up there just get hammered with people trying to fundraise. And so it's, and they do well. I saw the names and they've done well because that's where the deeper pockets were. How about, Jim, how about on that, if we're gonna take an ordinance committee, I hate to, and take, using Tom's word, I'd like to broaden it out. How about boating and safety committee? Or do you just want to keep it ordinance? Because really it's for safety.
Yeah, I gotta think about that.
Think about that. I mean, we don't have to do anything, just, but I'm just trying to broaden it out so that, because it's really about safety issues. Which contribute to,
Well, that actually could make sense because the ad hoc committee's work, a lot of it was research and planning and all of that. Frankly, I mean, for the first couple of months, we're gonna have work that's gonna be, you know, getting final ordinance written, getting resolutions in the town of Tainter and Menominee to rescind their ordinances. And go forward with the purchase of the buoys and that, but after that, there's not going to be a lot of other work for that committee to do, except for if we decide to adjust where the buoys are located.
right,
Otherwise, it's just, you know, it's take them out, store them in the end of the year and put them back in the spring and deal with any maintenance issues or anything else that goes along with it. So that could make some sense to have it be something broader like that. What was your suggestion again?
boating and safety. Because wake boats are gonna be an issue eventually. And that'll either be an ordinance or, you know, and it's a safety issue and it's a water
And then
quality
the
issue.
landings could dovetail into that because that's a boating related.
Right, well, and just look at the washing, from, power.
Yeah, because Elk Point had to close
Yeah.
early,
Right,
last fall because too much, that it eroded that work that they just did on that,
Yeah.
on their landing, so.
the only thing question I have on that is that there are a lot of boats out there that, trailers that don't have winches. That the only way that you're gonna get them on there is by driving them on. And there is, you know, those are bunks and they don't come with a winch. You put them in and then you drive them on. And, I think that's always gonna be an issue. And some of that may be somewhere down the line, we may be, contributing to some, you know, upkeep or at least advocating for upkeep.
Yeah,
of
because about the
boater.
only thing you could do is extend like a ramp out 30, 40 feet into the lake,
Right,
into the lake bed itself, because that's the only way you're gonna prevent it from washing out if people are gonna be.
well, yeah, wherever there's an edge, there's gonna be a hole. Okay, and the other.
But those, excuse me, Al, but those are improvements that the county could make if we raised revenue from the, launch fee.
Yeah, if we looked at the launch fee, yeah.
But they'd sure listen to us a little bit.
Except for Elk Point, because that's a private land.
That's private, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, the third thought I had, was to broaden out the weed piece to invasive species committee. So, we don't have anything right now, it's curly leaf pondweed, but what about, zebra mussels? I mean, that's gonna be an issue. Are there, I mean, there's other invasive species out there that we're gonna have to deal with. Now, I don't mean to load people up with things. I'm just trying to create a big enough container that as we get something, we have a place to put it, or at least a group to be able to start talking about it. Some of this stuff, we may say, no, we don't want it in a committee. We want it action at the board level, and we're gonna have to deal with it that way, but that was the thought that I had.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I know we kind of talked about in the last meeting and Chuck felt like it should say just weed harvesting. I don't know. I probably, there's a good chance I could be wrong about this, but a little bit is like what Jim said about once you get into that clockwork of taking the buoys in and out, once we've harvested weeds for a few years and we kind of have our paths that they're taking and we know where we got to go, does that become more of a, we keep doing it, but it's more of a clockwork thing that doesn't take quite as much research and time by a committee? And then can we have that group go on to the next thing, zebra mussels or cyanobacteria or whatever it might be, you know? I wasn't on that committee. I know it was a lot of work for them to get it up and be ready to vote on it this year.
Right.
But I see what you're saying. If we get 10 or 12 different committees, then we all have to chair 2 or 3 different things, or we can just all chair one thing and have it be a little bit broader. And if it falls into my funnel, I take it, and then everyone else does their thing, you know?
I think doing it that way as well gives people on the lake that aren't on the board an opportunity to use some of their interest and maybe some of their expertise
Yeah.
in that committee.
Well, and that's not to say that we can't use ad hoc to get started, you know? So if we're gonna attack the zebra mussel and, the, aquatic or the committee that's dealing with the weed harvesting says, well, we can't handle that. We need more people, then we start another committee. I'm just trying to keep it nice and neat and organized so that we don't spread ourselves too thin, because if we spread ourselves too thin, we can find about 20 different projects to do. And in about 3 years, you know, we're all gonna be ready to, you know, jump in the lake.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
so-
just from I mean, I guess we'd have to reach out or get some opinions from the public too, but how many different things do you really want to take to that annual meeting to vote on every year? You know, I mean, like, do we want to take 12 different projects in a year and do that? I mean, I'd rather focus on, like, 3 was a nice start this year. I mean, maybe in some years, if we end up doing something really big with sedimentation removal or something like that, maybe that's one, maybe it's only 2 things that year. You know, and
Well, my goal would be at the annual meeting to have more discussion of what we've accomplished and what we're trying to do than to listen to people ask questions that we've already answered the question to, and I think that was stated here today. The only problem is, that's not our meeting. That is the public's meeting, and they get to answer ask those questions. But then we need to do a better job of communicating those things beforehand. But no matter how much we communicate, there's always gonna be somebody that's gonna say, well, I missed the email.
yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, I didn't get that.
And
Yep.
so, but those are all good points.
And I'm not that anxious to introduce 12 projects,
Yeah,
but maybe 5.
yep,
I'm, one of the biggest surprises at the annual meeting, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here, was the gentleman that asked us to be bold.
yeah,
And it brought a ton of people to applause. And so if we have enough help from outside of the board, we can make those projects work.
you're right, a bigger staff can get more done, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's,
and if we don't have enough help, then we don't introduce them.
Yep, yep. That's part of not getting spread too thin, is having enough outside help to make
Right.
it all go.
Yep.
And if we don't have it, then we're not gonna be able to do as much. If we do, sure.
Now, just so that you know, I'm always gonna bring up the fact that I'm conscientious of sustainability. Now, whether you guys believe me or not, and wanna do it, you don't have to listen to me. I mean, I'm only one of 7, so you can always say, well, no, we're gonna do this, but I'm always gonna bring that up because too many organizations, I've seen it get a mile wide and an inch deep and nothing
Mhm.
ever gets done. And one of Pete's biggest thing is one of our values is it's gotta be action. And
Yep.
we gotta show some action. And so I'm taking that to heart. So now let's continue with the 4 basically the 4 committees that we have. I would propose that we call them invasive species, funding and financing, boater safety, and of course, strategic planning. We gotta complete that grant anyway. I would say that one should still be an ad hoc and not to change that into a standing committee. Because once that's done, then, that freezes up to do some other things. Is everybody okay with that, or do you wanna think that over, or what?
No, I'm okay, at least with the boating and safety one, mostly because I'm kind of reviewing the timeline for the ordinance aspect of this and in order to have this done before the 2025 boating season, we have to get started in September with finalizing an ordinance, getting on the agendas for the town of Tainter and Menominee in October, no later than November. And end of year stuff is difficult sometimes for government bodies. So you know, I think that it'd be fine to continue it because then I can
Okay,
look to recruit Bob and a few other people that want to be on that particular committee so we can continue with the rest of the ordinance aspect.
okay. Well, that's how we'll organize this. Do we need a motion for that?
So what we're doing is we're taking our existing ad hoc committees and making them all standing committees.
3 of them.
Except for strategic. You
Yeah.
asked
We're
for
creating,
discussion.
with mine, we're creating a new committee because my ad hoc committee was done.
Dissolved or,
And I dissolved it
okay,
because it fulfilled its purpose. So we're creating a new boating and safety committee.
and the finance and fundraising is also a new one.
Right? And then invasive species would just be expanding vegetation. Sedimentation is still sedimentation.
Could we call it invasive species and vegetation?
Yeah,
You
I
can
think
call
we
it
got-
whatever you want.
I think it's important. I think it's important to have the vegetation in there.
Yeah,
Because invasive species, I think of zebra mussels.
or the, what's that,
Or-
the
or-
spiny water flea or whatever.
Yeah, or call it vegetation and invasive species, I think.
Okay.
Keep vegetation.
We'll give vegetation and realize all of these committees contribute to water quality.
Yeah,
Okay. And we'll look at the water quality one and think a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's good that we try to figure out. I mean, to me, it's just that fight against the cyanobacteria. You're smelling it right now in August, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, we've had a good year this year because of the rain and moderate temperatures, but you know, just
I don't know if I
continue
need-
to explore what we can do to kill that stuff off when it's blooming, I think is a real simple way of saying it.
Right.
I don't know if I need to make a motion on this, but it would be my suggestion to just, like it says, discuss the possible names and make sure that Jerry and Chuck understand what we're doing here and vote on it next month.
Okay. All right.
Just me.
Except for my committee.
No, you keep going.
Yes.
We're
No, I
just,
mean, you still keep doing the work,
right.
regardless of what you're called.
Okay, I'll put that down for next month. And Adam, I'm assuming that you still want to be on the vegetation committee?
Sure, yeah. I think-
Okay. I mean, you have a vested interest in that area.
I think we've got a lot more work ahead of us yet,
Oh, yeah.
so I should probably stay on that.
I think you're about half done because the plant management, thing is big.
Yeah.
And it's gonna cost some money.
Yes.
So we gotta figure out how to get that done. Okay, anything else on that? All right, we'll put it up for a vote next month. And everybody keeps working on what they have right now. Most of it is just a name change anyway. Review the plan of work. I put that out for you guys for information. Like I said before, this is how I organize my mind. And I have to have things written down or I start chasing squirrels. And the three goals last year were: one, build a sustainable, forward-looking Lake District organization on positive relationships with constituents and related conservation groups, regionally and statewide. I think we've done that. Educate the Board of Commissioners and constituents on the issues and challenges facing the Lake District. I think we've done a fair job on that. And to develop a strategic plan where the three goals that we started with last year. And then got into the ordinances and it kind of expanded from there. I gave that to you, there again, I gave you the one that was completed as of, the time I sent it to you. But basically it was starting committees and doing all those kinds of things. It's just kind of a look back at what we did as opposed to look forward. I'm gonna be probably putting this on every agenda now at the end of the agenda to say, okay, what do we need to add to this? How do we keep this organized? And, as you look at this, get back to me with, areas that, you want to, kind of work on. Adam, you can get with Chuck and say, okay, where do we gotta go to get we gotta start working on a vegetation management plan? How do we go about getting that started? And, fundraising, just exactly kind of where you're gonna go. We'll tie these goals into, our strategic goals. They're all within, the strategic plan. And Jim, you can kind of give me a broad brush as to what you have to do, if you would, please. And I'll put it onto the plan, for the meetings and that you have to do and those kinds of things. Anything else on that? I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. It was basically just kind of a look back at what we accomplished this year. And we accomplished a fairly large amount of work was put in this year. And we don't seem to be too burned out. That's my biggest thing. Okay. I don't really need anything on that. Just realize that you gotta send me information if you want it on that. Approval of the contract for the aquatic plant management. Do I have a motion? We're gonna have a motion in a second and then, a discussion.
I'll make a motion that Al signs the statement of work for aquatic plant management, which was emailed out to everybody.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract with, aquatic plant management. Discussion.
I have a bunch of notes from Chuck and just kind of would like to clarify a few things since the meeting. We were glad to see that, that ad hoc recommendation passed at the meeting 118 to 8, I believe. So there's a lot of support for aquatic plant harvesting. The following Monday, Chuck contacted Alex Smith with the DNR and told him that that passed at the annual meeting, so he is well aware that we plan to harvest next summer. And still is on board with our experimental aquatic plant harvesting for 25, and as Al said, we'll have to do an actual aquatic plant management plan for 26. Also, since the meeting, we've been gracious enough to accept the use of Elk Point's ramp at no charge. That wasn't a for sure thing, and I thought maybe we'd have to even pay them some money, but they're willing to let us to offload there for free. So I think that's, you know, as we know, it's a private ramp and it's wear and tear, and that's pretty nice of them. Chuck also had additional contact with aquatic plant management. They're adding some equipment next year, but unfortunately, I think our plan that we voted on kind of steers us into what we're doing. And because we have the use of Elk Point's ramp, I don't think it's super crucial, but they're buying a transport barge, and so that's to haul plants between the harvester and the offload site, you know, so it could be a more efficient operation. Had we known that, maybe we would have designed it a little different, but we didn't know that at the time, and I would like to kind of explore like external funding or donations to maybe deploy that equipment. Yeah, so that's kind of why I have some grant questions, you know, like grant writing questions or funding questions. Sounds like that company is also willing to, after they're contracting with Lake Trust, to do private work. So if you have a big mess in front of your house that, like, basically sounds like they'll do additional work. I'm not sure of the details of that, but Chuck talked to him this week about that. So other than that, we're gonna start working on creating some maps. We have to kind of ask for a lot of harvesting and expect to get caught a little bit by the DNR, but that's kind of where we're at now, and aquatic plant management is gonna do all that permitting for us, you know, so all that legwork in year one, I think it was pretty good to contract somebody, because that permitting is all gonna be done by them. So, and then by getting a statement of work plan is we can lock in our dates. I think that's important, that we do that. Because I think all these people in these lake management businesses are getting pretty busy, so. And I do appreciate your idea, and I think that's a good thing for next year to not define a company, because who knows what can happen, you know, obviously, so I think that's something to consider, so. That's all I have from Chuck to relay.
Any other questions? Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I will sign that contract. Maybe I should make Chuck sign
You guys can figure that out.
it. No, I'd be happy to sign that. Okay, annual, meeting debrief. Okay, we had some suggestions at the beginning of the meeting. Jim, you had sent me an email. You want to just kind of run through some of the things that,
Well, same addressing kind of the, starting, I had a couple people say, start the meeting on time, no matter what, and your wife probably had the same thing happen that Catherine had, that the slowdowns in the lines were generally caused by people that were there as part of a trust
right,
and getting in the wrong line, not having the paperwork, not knowing the name of the trust. Like sometimes it would say, if it was the Al Brown Trust, the Al Brown Family Trust, they would think it would be under B for Brown, and it's not, it's under T for the.
or T for trust, or.
No, unless it said trust of Al Brown,
Right,
whatever the first word is. So, my daughter's suggestion, which was good, was to have like a little bit of signage when people are waiting in line saying, if you are representing a trust, here's having a list, have your paperwork ready. The name of the trust is, the first letter of whatever the first name of it is, and then spell it out so that they're not getting there to the front, having to either fill out the form work or the paperwork or that, so that, and that can either, it can be a combination of signage or the greeters that are coming in. Can almost ask everybody coming in saying, are you a resident or whatever? Are you part of a trust? Or maybe that's the only thing they have to ask. Are you part of a trust? In figuring that out, or maybe we have a line that's a trust line or something like that, or.
Yeah,
a
that's
trust
not a
table.
bad idea. I think I could probably, it's not. I think I could probably almost sort it in Excel and make them just their own separate category.
yeah,
Or it might take some manual just going through the list and picking them out and cutting them and pasting them down, but it's not that, I mean, I guess it's enough of them, but it wouldn't take forever to do that, so. We
well,
could have its own little separate table for it.
I never thought of that, but having a trust line would be probably, because it's all the same issue.
Yeah,
Mhm.
And here's the other thing, and here's the breakdown. My wife went through, and broke them all down. There were 154 people from, town of Tainter. There were 7 from, Menominee and Red Cedar. There were 8 from Sherman. And
Yeah, so we didn't delegate that work evenly at all.
we had 2 lines for Tainter and 2 for 15 other people. And so, I think her suggestion was that everybody gets all the lists.
Sure, yep,
So, but if we have 3 lines for everybody and then 1 line for trust.
yeah, cause those ones are always gonna take longer by the time you get everybody to get their stuff out and figure it out. Yeah.
Right,
or a table with 2 people manning it for trust,
right.
because they just take forever.
Just the trust line, and I think we can get through that pretty fast, especially if we have it sorted out, and now they know. Well, if it's an Al Brown trust, or it's a trust of Al Brown, or Brown Family Trust, or,
It's gonna
whatever.
be a way easier list to pick through to find how it's named and what they're calling it. Yeah,
Correct,
yep,
correct,
Yep.
and then that way people, because there were some people that waited in line and they were in the wrong line. And so it would just move smoother, then I think we can start on time. I mean,
Those are all good suggestions. I think it's
and so
real smart.
next year, because you have the list of the mailing list because of the taxes and stuff.
Yep,
Well, remember to sort that out. So 3 lines with everybody and then 1 line for trust. Okay, other suggestions?
Those are the two main feedback things I got.
I think we've, and Gerald, we've kind of looked at some of yours. Um,
On
It-
year one, did you have a public comment time limit and didn't in year two? Or am I dreaming that?
No,
Yeah,
we did in the first year we had, I think we were gonna limit it to like 3 or
minutes,
5 minutes, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know that the comments were exceptionally long, that the hard part. Okay, from my end, the hard part is it's their meeting, it's not our meeting, it's their meeting and people get to speak.
Yeah.
So, but I think we can say, well, we didn't have, what's his face get up this time 5, 6 times at a meeting. So that went, yeah, I mean, he only got up once or maybe
Once or
twice.
twice, yeah.
But Joey, she got up a couple of times, but I mean,
Yeah,
how do you actually cut that off? Because it's their meeting, it's not our meeting.
the only thing I could see, and I think is a little bit what he's getting at is if we've already addressed something and moved on, like, let's move on, and it gets tricky because, and I wasn't even really, I don't remember it from the first annual meeting, but it happened in a couple different scenarios, this one where people wanted to get up and make like an amendment to what we were doing. And if that's all within the rules of what can be done in an annual meeting, I don't know what you can do. You have to let them go through that process. I mean, I think a lot of people are gonna look around and go, man, everything's passing 90% to 10% or 95% to 5%. Like, if I am fighting against this over and over and over again, I'm not getting anywhere, but you can't deny them the right to.
The minority has a right to speak.
Yeah.
As much as the majority.
And, I saw the comments too, where people said, oh, it ran long. Well.
It's a once a year meeting for that. That wasn't really that long. really.
It is,
And what-
it was 2 hours and 45 minutes. And do we wish it was 2 hours? Yes, but realistically, it's
It was
not
a
going
really
to be.
nice day out, so everybody was mad about that, I think.
But it wasn't at 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
so-
that was good.
Yeah,
I mean, you could be when the county's done a budget workshop meeting, it's 5 hours.
Yeah,
So
you can't cut some of that stuff out of there. We certainly
even our
can't say.
meetings are
yeah.
2 hours long.
Yeah.
It wasn't much longer than a regular monthly meeting, so.
Right.
No,
The only
right.
way that people will have fewer questions is if they are more involved in the process all along. If you show up and haven't looked in on anything in the last year, it's gonna be a long meeting.
Yeah,
Because
because
people are gonna have a ton of questions.
yeah, the sedimentation questions, it was, things that if they have been paying attention, you guys had already looked into. Same thing with the no wake and buoy thing, That's why I tried to stress up front that all of us we were not on the same page when that started. And we had 9 meetings. I would say that not a single one of our meetings was less than 2 hours. I'd say almost all of them were over 2. There was a couple of 3-hour meetings.
Yeah.
Where a lot of things were discussed. And, did you think of this? No, we did not. Not
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, it comes back to, we got a saying in business that, 10% of your customers create 90% of your headaches. And I don't want to say that anybody who comes up and questions things is a headache, because it's an important part of the process, but we can try to manage that meeting as hard as we want to. We can't put a cap on it, can we? We can't say it's only from 10 to noon and the timer goes off and we're out of there. I mean, we can't, I don't think you can do that.
Not really, because if we haven't gotten to like the budget and everything at the end, we still have to do that. But that's why I wanted to get up and say, hey, you guys all have some great ideas and some passion. anybody can attend
We
and
got
be
all
part of
these
these committees.
committees. Yeah.
Yeah, all you can step right up,
Yep.
you know, and, you know. But bottom line, I wanted also, just like I said in my email to everybody, that overall, I mean, you know, that later that day at Jake's and the next weekend, I had nothing but positive feedback. I had some real constructive points that people said, the meeting was long. I didn't want to get up and say anything. But I figured I could catch you at Jake's and
Yep.
give you my ideas and thoughts, and that's perfectly acceptable too. So if you don't want to, you know, deliver your remarks in a public forum, then, you know, it's we're all accessible, or all listed on the website, so.
The good problem that we have is that we had 179 people
Right.
that
Yeah.
registered. So that means that there were some people there, you know, caregivers, or, you know, like my neighbor whose daughter is not on she doesn't live there. She isn't an owner, but she comes because she brings Shirley, you know? So I think it's a good problem to have. I think we're always gonna be balancing time. I think if we get it down to an hour, people are gonna say it's too long.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think I wrote some notes down here. I certainly at the beginning can ask people to be succinct and, to stay on the topic and the limit. I can ask them to limit their comments to the topics. Because, just as Gerald did today, he got up and he can speak at this meeting. He can speak at every single meeting from now until we have the next annual meeting.
Mhm.
People can do that. I'd like to keep people at the annual meeting on the topics at the annual meeting, as opposed to general questions. We didn't have really too much of that. There was the lady with her buoys, and it was somewhat related. But it's really not meant to be informational. It's really meant for people to give testimony
Yep.
to a point. And so, we always run that risk. I think 3 projects is a good number. I certainly don't want to have more. I think, providing information, a brief information, before is helpful, because not everybody's gonna go to the meetings, even though we invite them, they're not gonna go to the meetings. I think it's important that they understand that all of those proposals up there were thought out and as a result of work by this group. I mean, it's just that we just didn't come up with, you know, like Jim said, he had 9 meetings, you know, at 2 hours apiece. And plus we had a public hearing, and all of those kinds of things. So, we'll take.
And you wanna deal with public comment, that first buoy meeting, over 20 people got up and spoke, I think.
Yeah.
And I enforced a time limit and just said, and also 1 comment per person, please.
Yeah.
We learned that one, didn't we?
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on the meeting?
The only thing I could think that maybe, I don't know if people would like it or not, but do we start it even an hour earlier, like at 9, and get people out the door by noon? So they have an entire afternoon. I don't know if
I don't
that,
have a problem with that at all.
I was kind of thinking that we were all there. I'm like, fire it up, let's go. I mean, I know, and then 9 o'clock's not like extremely early. I
Well, for
mean,
some people it is.
Hey, 10 a.m.'s early for me on it.
I can't wait till
It's
that
not
day.
me. I'm usually up by 4 or 5, so it's not me, but I know that some of my neighbors aren't up before 9:30, 10 o'clock.
I gotta go to bed an hour earlier, you know, the night before the big annual meeting. And it's up to you guys. I don't feel super passionately about it, but it would get us out of there by noon then. And then if it like this year was a good example. It was a beautiful day. I mean, you're out of there by noon, go get on your boat, go have some fun, and, you know, enjoy the day.
Chances are the first Saturday of August is gonna be nice.
Pretty nice most of the time,
Yeah.
as long as the algae bloom isn't too bad.
Right.
Well, I put down 9 o'clock. You guys okay with that?
Sure.
I mean, we did the first one at 1 and then they didn't like it in the afternoon, so we moved it to the morning, so. That gets us out by noon.
I hope so.
You never know. I mean, our numbers, I think, went up this year. They didn't go down.
Yeah, well, they did go up, because I thought they were gonna go down, I guess 99, and
Yeah,
people proved me wrong, it was up 50 people from last year, I
I was off by 100.
think.
Okay. Those are all good suggestions. And thank you for all your comments. The next meeting is, I didn't write it down, but it's September
19th.
19th. Right here. Any agenda items that you want?
I think we still have G to review, don't we?
Oh, yeah, we skipped.
Gee, I'm on.
Discussion of pontoon donation from the.
Oh. That
Friends of the
wasn't
Red Cedar
on, that
Basin?
wasn't on the meeting that was posted.
Oh, okay,
That wasn't on the agenda item.
okay.
But, seeing that you brought that up, I'm gonna put it on the next, agenda. We have a pontoon. We gotta do something with it. Air Tech is wondering, what are we gonna do with the pontoon? So, does anybody wanna go with me to Air Tech and talk to them?
I've seen the pontoon. It's a fixer-upper. The I had it looked at and we're gonna have to replace the motor. The tilt and trim is shot. The seats are all shot. I'm sure we will need a new deck, but the pontoons are good. Keep in mind, it's a 25-foot pontoon. My 20-foot trailer will not handle it. I'm all for having it. But there are some handicaps that come with it. And the last one I'll mention is someone's got to keep it.
Well, I'm not too, I have a trailer that's big enough to move it, and I have a place we could, well, my dad has a place we could start, he won't mind.
Right in his front yard.
Well, he'll put it out in the back, you can't really see it. But my suggestion would be, it's nice that somebody would be willing to donate something like that, but if we have to put a new motor on it, redeck it, do all this work to it. If we want a pontoon, why don't we just go online and find a used one for $3,000 to $5,000, because we're easily gonna have that stuff into this thing.
Or get Air Tech or somebody to
Sponsor us on it.
sponsor it with a pontoon.
What do we
That
need
was-
it for?
I don't know.
I
That's the
mean, we
thing.
can
We-
use my boat or someone,
Yeah.
like we did for the aquatic vegetation guy, like, I think we got enough boats.
Yeah, I'll let us use my pontoon too if we wanna
Well-
go on a field trip or something.
I think the biggest thing, is that if we keep it, two things. Number one, I think we keep it as a tow behind, as just a barge to put stuff on. The second thing is where we're gonna store it. So I mean,
And
we have some land kind of by Twin Springs Campground where we park all of our boats in the winter. If there's one more sitting there, that isn't gonna be a problem, it's just. And we can get it there with my trailer, but,
I have a suggestion as well. I don't want to mention it in public because I don't want to put this place on the spot, but we can bring it up next month.
okay. And I was gonna run over there today and look at it and I think we need to give it a little thought. And it needs to be somebody besides me looking at it because I'm not one to keep something that doesn't run. But I think because it was donated, I think there's a little bit of a politeness and a little bit of a political thing that we have to walk through. If that makes sense.
yeah, I get it. No,
I'll
that's-
put it on next month's agenda.
I like your idea, Al. to keep it as a barge.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we don't have to worry about motors. I hate motors because you gotta keep them running.
Yeah,
And they don't, and nothing deteriorates as faster than something that isn't.
And if at some point
That you're getting-
we get our own harvester, that barge could come in handy for piling vegetation on. So
That's
There you go.
that's exactly what Chautauqua does, is they have a barge that, because that thing, that their weed cutter only goes 3 miles an hour. They take and pull up next to it, unload on it, and then run it to the, it's just like being in a farm field.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, same way, chop
just-
corn or whatever else, yeah.
it isn't a gravity box, but it could be made to
Pretty
look like
much,
one.
yep.
Okay, we'll put that on. Anything else that you want to put on next month's agenda? We got committees, we got pontoon. Dan Zier, who is the Natural Resource Director and he's the chairperson of the Red Cedar Partnership, will be our speaker next month. And so he has a perspective of working with all of these groups that I think is really interesting. And he does a good job of bringing us all together. So, he has agreed to come, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
We,
So,
we should check in with him, but
yeah, I'll
yeah,
check
he said
with
he
him.
said he would.
I'll check with him before, yeah. Anything else?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Been a motion, second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you for coming all. Thank you for staying. That sometimes is even better than coming.